Good morning, everyone. This is the September 4th meeting of the Governance Subcommittee of the Oregon Public Defense Commission. And we're a very small committee, so we're all here. Good morning, Paul. Good
All
morning, Rob.
right.
And the director of OPDC, Ken Sanchagrin, is also with us. Good morning, Ken.
Good morning.
We have a lot of things to accomplish this fall on this committee, and there's only three of us, and all of the things we have to accomplish take a fair amount of work. So we have one new OPDC commissioner who I am hoping will join our committee. He couldn't be with us today to try us out, but I will talk to him. And we're still waiting for the governor to approve some additional appointments. And I'm hoping that when that happens, we will also be able to have some extra help on this committee. We have three things to talk about today. One is the KPM study as far as it involves the questions that commissioners had to answer. One is the audit committee charter, and one is the bylaws update. So I'd like to start with the KPM study if everyone is agreeable to that. Are we good? Okay, I am going to share a screen because I have this mostly on PowerPoint slides, and I'm hoping I can figure out how to do this on this kind of Zoom. So here we go. Uh, let's get those slides up. Um, there we go. And share. Okay, can everybody see this? Yes? Am I getting a yes? Thank you. Okay. So these key performance measures are required by statute, ORS 291.110, and the commission's best practices evaluation, those were the questions we needed to answer, is one of the five KPMs. The other four KPMs all require data that the agency staff puts together and turns in. The questions that are asked of the commissioners, there's 15 of them, are mandated. So we don't have any control over what questions are asked or how those questions are asked. And both last year and this year, people commented that they didn't really understand what some of those questions were getting at. And we'll talk about that in a minute. Um, the way the responses are measured is not mandated. So what we did last year and also this year is we gave commissioners the opportunity to answer on a scale of five, going from strongly agree down to strongly disagree with no opinion in the middle. And we also gave respondents the opportunity to give written statements in reaction to the questions. Uh, the only thing that gets turned into the legislature through to DAS and through legislative fiscal are the actual numeric answers. The written comments do not get turned in, and the written comments are all anonymous. So I have no idea who answered what to each one. Um, After thinking about this year's responses as well as last year's, and there's a report on file from last year's responses, we may want to think about having some kind of introduction session or training session for commissioners next year before they need to answer the KPM questions, so that at least everybody understands what the questions are about. So I'm going to go through all of the answers from this year. Um, we, I think, should be making a report to the whole commission about these answers. So what I've done is I've organized them not in the order in which they're asked, but rather in a kind of a topical order. And if you all think that this is effective, I can use these same slides and this same approach to report to the commission. Alternatively, I could turn it into a written report. Obviously, if Rob or Paul, either one of you, or Ken for that matter, or Emma Shea, I see she's here, have any suggestions for making the presentation more effective, obviously happy to take those into consideration. So let's see, how do I get to the next slide? Okay, there we go. The first two questions I want to go over went to the performance expectations for the executive director. We, as a commission, are supposed to, by statute, uh, articulate performance expectations, and we are then also supposed to um, evaluate each year how the executive director is um, reaching or not reaching those performance expectations. And as you can see from the slides, there was a lot of disagreement among the um, 8 commissioners who answered the questions. Um, Let me stop and say that last year we had also asked staff people who had interactions with the commission also to answer the questions. We did not do that this year because technically the questions are only supposed to go to commissioners. So there was a lot of disagreement here, but the comments to the questions um, show why there's some disagreement. Um, we basically have not articulated any performance expectations. And we certainly have not evaluated the executive director because we didn't have a basis for evaluating her or now him. Um, so this is something we absolutely have to do. And there's good reasons why we didn't do this last year. I think there are good reasons. For one thing, at this point last year, we were still in the judicial branch. We were not in the executive branch. Um, None of these questions had ever been answered before, as far as I know, by the previous commission. And because we were about to transition to the executive branch, there was pretty widespread feeling on the part of the commissioners that to evaluate the executive director right in the middle or at the beginning of that transfer would probably not be beneficial. But now we really do have to do it. And so, as the governance committee, I think it's our task to articulate performance expectations and secondly, to articulate and come up with a way to evaluate whether the executive director is meeting those expectations. So that's one or two tasks that we have to address starting this fall. So when I tried to look around for performance expectations, the place I looked was in ORS 151.219. And that statute lists a whole bunch of things that the executive director shall do. And I've put them all on this slide, not in the same order that they are in the statute, since I wanted to fit it all on one slide. Um, and so if you take a minute to look at um, these are pretty basic things that the executive director of an executive branch agency should be doing. And so it seems to me that an absolute minimum of our performance expectations would be everything on this list. And so the question for us is whether we want to add anything in addition to the things on this list as performance expectations. And I don't think we need to have a huge discussion of that today, but if people on the committee or Ken or MSHA wanted to provide Mara with suggestions for things that might be added to this list. I would be happy to put those together and we could discuss it in more detail at our October committee meeting. But I'm happy to stop for a minute and take any comments that people want to make at the moment about this issue.
If I may, Vice Chair, the one comment or suggestion that I would have is um, under the governor's office now requires directors to undergo 360 evaluations every 2 years. And I think it might be beneficial for Mara to reach out to the governor's office to get a copy of the questions that are included, because I think if nothing else, including those questions annually to commissioners will make them better equipped to answer it for the official one for the governor as well, because they contain some of those common types of questions that I think when you face them and you've not seen them in a while, like I think one was literally the director is a good steward of state dollars, and I think that's touched on with some of the items on here. But what does stewardship means, and how do I evaluate it? So I think if folks are thinking about it more often, that'll make it actually more effective at kind of the more at that official point. And if nothing else, it would be good just for folks to think about in the interim. So maybe that would be beneficial too, and maybe hit on a couple of these items.
I agree. And as long as we're asking, as we're loading more work on Mara's plate, I think it would be beneficial if Mara could find out for us from a couple of other agencies what things they have in their list of performance expectations and how they go about doing these 360 evaluations. Who is included in the list of the 360 evaluators, um, how they, whether they do it online or whether they do it by actual hard copy mailing, whether the 360 evaluations are numeric or they also involve comments. I think if we can learn from the experiences of some other executive branch agencies, it would move us forward more efficiently.
Yeah, I think structurally she should be able to get all that information from the governor's office, but then to maybe figure out, like, because if I recall, you're supposed to choose a certain number of folks who qualify as peers and a certain number of folks who qualify as stakeholders. But it'd be interesting to see the breadth and the depth that other agencies go into when actually making those decisions. So I think that'd be great. But at least I think some of the legwork should all come from the governor's office when she reaches out about the questions.
I think so too. But I know that I've been involved in 360 evaluations, not with government. And one of the tricky issues is whether and how to include evaluators who are in positions that are arguably or potentially hostile to what the executive director is doing. So, for example, in our situation, I know that frequently the organization that district attorneys have put together has maybe what some of us might consider unrealistic expectations. And the question would be how to handle things like that.
Yeah, I think that's great. That's a great question to see how other agencies have handled it.
Yeah. Any other input on this, Paul or Rob?
Yeah, I got a couple of things. I actually was going to mention too, to talk to the executive branch, since we are an executive agency now. Seems like the governor's office's expectations definitely should be considered, because that's our job, is to oversee this as an executive agency at this point. The second thing is, I don't know, there's a couple of mentions about duties to the commission, but a lot of it's just the technical stuff and the legal stuff. But I think it's important to evaluate the executive director as to what kind of communications and other type of relationships they have with the commission. That's not specifically addressed in the statute, but I think it's an important part of the job, the communications piece.
I agree. Great suggestion. Um, Anything else? Yeah, Paul.
Yeah, yeah, looking at this single slide, that refers to and as I assume, repeats some of the ORS statute 151.219 to me, the most important things on this whole list are items number 3 and 4. I think that's the core of our work. And I would hate to get bogged down in too many other areas because I think we are in a situation where we really need to do some big stuff to make our services as effective and worthwhile to the governor and to the legislature as possible. I recognize that preparing and submitting an annual report, a biennial budget, employing good personnel and contracts for services, all of that is important. But unless we deal with items on this slide, 3 and 4, we're not really doing our job.
Right. I think those are clearly super important and probably the most important, but all of the things on this slide come verbatim from ORS 151.219. So even though those are the most important, all of the others are legislatively mandated as well. So we can maybe not get bogged down in them, I agree, but we definitely do have to cover them. So
Chair Mandenberg, I will go ahead and work with Mara to go ahead and connect her with some other agencies. In doing that, would you like me to see if I can find somebody in another commission that has gone through this and connect you?
yeah, that would be great. Thank you, Amiche. That would be fantastic.
All right, perfect. Thank you.
Yeah. All right, moving along. The next question that I want to address is the one that deals with the agency's mission. The question was, the agency's mission and high-level goals are current and applicable. The numeric answers are interesting. Everybody either has no opinion or strongly agrees or agrees. And this is one of the slides that definitely starts bringing out some of the frustrations that commissioners feel because the comments, well, you can read them for yourself. They clearly show how frustrated most, if not all of us, have been feeling that the time we put in when we were still in the judicial branch to put together a mission and goals and a strategic plan has been stymied in a number of different ways after we've moved to the executive branch. Much seems to depend on how you define current and applicable. They're current in our minds and they're applicable in the sense that we think they will address the problem. They're not current and applicable in the sense that we have to synchronize with the governor and with the legislature. And those two entities don't seem to be agreeing with everything that we wanted to do. So I don't know what there is to do about this. It's just this is where we are, and I think it's a pretty accurate reflection of where we are once you look at the comments. I'm not sure it's an accurate reflection of the reality if you just look at the numeric responses. Any comments on this question? Okay. So there were a bunch of questions that went to how the commission is doing its oversight. And I'm putting these all together. These were all the questions, and I'll show the results on the next slide. But I'll take a minute so you can refresh your recollection with the questions. Everybody good? All of the numeric ratings on these questions were agree or strongly agree, except for number 6. The question number 6 was, the commission is appropriately involved in policy-making decisions. One person said strongly disagree, and I don't know whether it's that person who made the written comment that I'm about to show, but I wouldn't be surprised. Here's the written comment. I have no idea how widespread this sentiment is among commissioners. There's only one person who made this comment and only one person who said strongly disagree. If we're thinking of adding elements to the executive director evaluation, we might want to add something that captures whether the executive director is ensuring that staff carry out guidance from the commission, where such guidance is appropriate. And I don't know that we've ever discussed as a commission what we are appropriately expected to do to guide agency staff and what is outside of our boundaries. Um, the agency staff relations with the commission are not specifically addressed in the statute in 151.219. The closest is in subsection H. The executive director is supposed to supervise the personnel, operation, and activities of the commission. So that's very general. It doesn't really cover the relationship between the commission and the staff. Um, any reactions to this? I see, yeah, Rob's right. There was another comment on number 6. So here are the other comments. On number 5, the commission is expected to be more involved then it may be a good idea to treat commissioners' positions as part-time jobs and compensate them accordingly. Again, all of these comments on commission oversight questions reflect some of the frustration that commissioners are feeling about how much work there is to do and how our work is then reacted to by other entities. The commission has all the responsibility, none of the authority, et cetera. You can read through all that. And then this one. The last one is interesting. I've heard that our LFO is not pleased with our budgeting. My understanding, and I could not have a complete understanding, and Emma Shea or Ken may do more. I did not think the LFO had any issues with how well we audit or how well we actually do the budget. My understanding is the LFO's problem was that the buckets in our budget didn't synchronize with the budget, with the buckets in our organizational chart. And my understanding of the reason for that lack of synchronization was that in reaction to the unrepresented persons crisis, some staff were moved around or replaced differently so that the staff could address the most pressing problems. And it's not it's not easy to do that and also do the revisions to the organizational chart and the other kinds of bucketing that take longer to do. So I don't think that the LFO had any questions about how accurate our budgeting was. But Ken or Emma Shea, you might step in if I don't have that right.
No, that's exactly right. And my understanding when I came here that, what is it, 3 directors ago, a lot of positions were moved.
Yeah.
And, people were put in positions that didn't align with the budgeting buckets. And I know that for me, when I came on, I didn't think we had a procurement team, but we did. We just took those positions to manage the contracts. And so there was a lot of movement that was not tracked. And as you said, in response to the crisis, we moved some folks. And again, previous to me coming on. And so we've been trying to align those buckets for quite some time.
Yeah, I remember that Jessie, when she was executive director, had endless discussions with our LFO and endless reiterations of the organizational chart to try to make it all line up in a way that he was happy with.
Well, and we can't just move people. What we're up against is the HR issue. We can't just take somebody and go, oh, someone made a mistake. You were hired on the wrong position. We're going to put you in this other department that you don't have a skill set to really add anything to. And so those are some of the issues she was fighting against. And we were trying to align the best we could with the staff we had and, working with HR. So that is my understanding.
Yeah, I think we're all more sensitized to some of those issues, and the transition into the executive branch is not been easy. So, but other than that, I think the comments are really more about just the frustration we all feel about having this extremely serious problem to address and not having the tools that we think we need to address it. So I'm not surprised that that came out in these written comments. Next one was the commission oversight question number 13. The commission coordinates with others where responsibilities and interests overlap. Again, here we have at least one person who disagrees with this. Most people strongly agreed or agreed. I find that a little puzzling because I personally am not sure how we coordinate with others, but the comments sort of reflect, I think, a more nuanced understanding of what's going on. So I know we've had discussions at commission meetings about this being a workforce problem and a system problem and not just a public defense problem. And I guess, again, I suppose the numeric reactions reflect the fact that or we think that we are trying to coordinate with others, but again, the comments show that there's some frustration there. Any comments on this? So here are commission member questions. There were two of them. The commission members act in accordance with their roles as public representatives, and the commission members identify and attend appropriate training sessions. There was only one comment that was substantive. There were almost every single question had a comment from a relatively new commission member saying that the member didn't feel qualified to answer the question. So I haven't included those. But here, the one substantive comment was this one. And I don't know, again, how widespread that reaction is. I can't recall in the year and a half I've been on the commission that we've ever talked about what our roles are as public representatives. But if we're going to have some kind of discussion before the next year's KPMs, we may want to discuss what that means and whether we think we are fulfilling that role. Similarly, with appropriate training, I assume that commissioners have either checked in with Workday to see if there are trainings they need to take or have been informed by Mara that they are behind in specific trainings. And I don't know if that's a valid assumption. So any comments or input on these two questions? Nope. Okay. Question number 7 had to do with the POPs. And again, we have a lot of agreement here that our policy option packages are aligned with our missions and goals. But this was one place where there was an actual comment with constructive criticism that I thought was very interesting. And there was one comment, again, the frustration comment, but this was the constructive criticism comment. And, I'm not a very political person. Being on this commission is my first experience with state government that doesn't involve a courtroom. And so I have no personal opinion on this uh, comment, but it seems to me that at least it's something that when we get around to articulating policy option packages in the future, we may want to make sure that the commission takes this comment to heart. And if the legislative subcommittee is resuscitated, this is certainly a comment that I think needs to be passed along to them. So any reactions to this slide or this question? Nope, we're good. Okay. So we're not sharing anymore. So a couple of questions. How should we do need to make a report to the whole commission about these KPMs. Do you want to use these PowerPoint slides? Do you want to turn this into a written report? Or do you want to do a third thing? And if so, what would that be? Rob and Paul. Yeah, Paul. You're muted.
I would suggest we do whatever's easiest. I don't see this as a core function of the group. It's something that we have to do because now we're in the executive branch. But I'd really rather get on with solving the problem rather than filling out paperwork for the bureaucracy.
Okay. I agree. It's more important to solve the problem. But in terms of doing what we need to do, which is report this to the commission, do you want me to do a written report? Do you want me to use these slides? Do you have an opinion about that?
Whatever's easiest.
Whatever's easiest. Okay, Rob, do you have an opinion?
I guess I appreciate you presenting this to this group. I think for the full commission, perhaps a written report and then like reserve 10 minutes for discussion. So people do have something specific, I guess. The area, a lot of it, I agree with Paul, is pretty much in the weeds for some of us because it's not applicable on our month-to-month stuff that we do. It will be relevant when we come around to do some of the reviews of some of this stuff, though, I guess. So I think I agree with the written report and then maybe just a short, brief period for maybe comment should be sufficient. If people want a work group, we could do a work group later on, I guess. But I think taking up the entire commission's time is not a good use of our time.
Great. I'll do a written report. That won't be hard to do. And Mara and Emma Shea will follow up with the executive director evaluation, and I will put that on the agenda for our October meeting because that's something we have to do, even though it is not directed toward the problem. All right, the second thing on our agenda today is the audit committee charter, and the last time we looked at the audit committee charter was in May. We went over a draft that the governance committee, the Oregon Judicial Department, and Scott Martin had all commented on. And the urgency that we felt then has now ceased because the audit committee is now holding public meetings. So that was the big thing that was sort of holding us up. And Rob, you're the representative to the audit committee. Do you want to let us know what's going on now?
Yeah, on the charter, we haven't met since our last governance committee meeting. I did a little 5-paragraph report to Susan earlier. Since that meeting, no further work has transpired on the audit committee charter within the audit committee meeting. Partly is because of workload in summertime, and we only have one internal auditor, and our internal auditor, Scott Martin's been working on uh, has been working on an audit for the expense audit, court mandated expense, and expenses that are going out. And that audit is being finalized, and they've been doing a lot of work over the last several weeks on that. We have an audit committee meeting next Monday or Tuesday, at which point the charter will be on there. John, the audit committee chair, still has to go look at it and look at the final things. I'm hoping that we are able to bounce it back to the full committee approved by the audit committee really soon. But at this point, other work has been interfering with their ability to move on it. We do have the comments. I think we're very close. I really do want to get that wrapped up, so we have to quit talking about this. And I think with the final resolution on the public meeting versus non-public body, I think we are 95+% there.
I think so too. And, a lot of the comments that the Judicial Department made on that last draft were things that were pretty non-controversial, I think. So, okay, so we can look forward to hearing something final in October.
Yes.
Yep, sounds good. All right. The last thing on our agenda today is the bylaws. So we definitely have to amend the bylaws. And we probably need to do that pretty soon. I mean, it would be good to be able to start the next calendar year with either having amended the bylaws. That may not be proper, but certainly having something to present to the commission to discuss and hopefully adopt at some point. So the current bylaws are available on the OPDC website, and I'm sure that Mara can make them available to everybody else on this committee if necessary. There are a number of changes that were made this last legislative session to our governing statutes. And some of those changes take place in January 2026. They take effect. Some of those changes took effect on July 1st of this year. And I have not gone through the legislation with a fine-tooth comb yet to figure out exactly what all those changes are. That's one task that needs to be done so that we can accurately incorporate whatever it is we need to incorporate into our bylaws. And we definitely, with a year more experience and now 8 months of experience in the executive branch, need to go through those bylaws and figure out what needs to be changed based on our experience. And one of the things for sure, as I went through them relatively quickly, is there's nothing in our bylaws about how the commission chooses a chair or a vice chair. We just sort of did it, but there's nothing in our bylaws about it. And now that we know that Jennifer is not going to request being reappointed to the commission, we know that we're going to have to choose a new chair. And we're going to have to do that in January. And so how we do that, I think, is something that we need to at least have a suggestion that the commission can adopt before we need to actually make that change in January. So I would like to parcel out some tasks on these bylaw amendments among the three of us And then if we have a new addition to the committee, we can add the fourth person. Because I don't want to have to do it all myself. So even though this is, not, again, Paul, I agree with your frustration that all of this administrative work takes away from our ability to solve the crisis, but it's background work that we have to do. And once we do it, it'll be done, and then we won't have to do it again, hopefully, for a very long time. So one thing that I know that needs to be done is to go through House Bill 2614 and figure out all the things that have to be um, included, all the things that require amendments, that kind of thing. Another thing that has to be done is to just read through the bylaws and come up with suggestions for things that have to be eliminated or changed or amended or added. And the third thing, and this is again something I'm going to ask Mara to help us with, is if we could see bylaws from other somewhat similar commissions that would give us some ideas of how bare bones they need to be, or some things that we hadn't thought of. That would be, I think, extremely useful. So, in terms of dividing up those three tasks, I'm happy to take whichever one of those three tasks uh, the other two of you don't want to do. But leave it up to you to choose.
I'm going to suggest that the compliance one, the first one, compliance with new laws, be given to our legal counsel and
We
pay
don't
for it.
have legal counsel.
And
We
pay
don't
for it.
have legal counsel.
No, I know, but we have someone who acts as our legal counsel, and we have a budget for it. And this seems to be the ideal thing to me that they should be doing. And if the governor doesn't want to, or the legislator doesn't want to put a position in here for legal counsel, so be it. But this is why we have it.
Well, I want to push back a little bit on that, Rob, if you let me interrupt.
Mhm.
Um, we have to pay a hefty fee for the use of Department of Justice legal advice. We have a very limited budget. And I think that rather than ask them to both look at our existing bylaws and look at 2614 and come up with suggestions, it might be a more efficient use of their time. Now, if you don't agree, obviously we talk about it, but I think it might be a more efficient use of their time if we go through it and look at it and come up with what we think needs to be done and just ask them to react to what we've come up with. Now, again, you may think it would be more efficient to do it the other way, and so we can discuss that.
No, my point was hire them to go through our current bylaws for compliance with the new statutes, not necessarily to come up with new ideas about how to govern or to review other things, but a limit one of those three tasks that you had mentioned. Because if that's simply a statutory thing, like in order to bring into compliance, you need to do this and this and this, it seems like something they could do. And it wouldn't take a lot of conferences with them to talk about best practices or structure of the commission or anything. That was my proposal.
Okay. Paul, do you have a reaction to that? You're muted.
And I'm not good at becoming unmuted. So I agree with Rob. I would put some sideboards on it, though, Rob. I'd suggest that we ask them to do more than that, which is absolutely necessary to comply.
So ask them to just tell us what's
We
necessary.
don't want them going out and doing good as they see it. We want them to solve our problem and do no more.
Right. Okay. Ken or Emiche, from an administrative and budget point of view, do you have any input on this suggestion?
Um, I do. I think I fall a little bit more in your camp, Vice Chair, and given our limited budget, at the risk of making my life harder, I would rather do it myself than to give it to DOJ because I'm that concerned about our DOJ budget. And so I will volunteer if that's the only way to get it done.
Oh, well, I'll do it.
No. That's not the solution either. I
No,
just think
no.
that we're so early in the biennium. I might feel differently if we were 3/4 of the way through and I knew what our engagement with DOJ had been and what our bills were coming through. But this early, I think this is something that that we can do internally.
And I was just going to agree with Ken, because of our budget and the costs are astronomical. However, I believe that the bylaws that are currently in place, Eric did work with Christy Munson at DOJ on those. But yes, we need to update and make them compliant. And I also agree with you on the voting. And I think we can pull from several other commissions. I already pulled it up.
Oh, for the chair.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
agree. And maybe it is a combination like what Eric did before. I think it would be good for at least staff to do a first pass and then maybe give that to DOJ. That would kind of meet what Commissioner Lipscomb was mentioning too. We want to scope the things that we give to DOJ as narrowly as possible to try to minimize those bills. I like to joke that they're my most expensive best friends. I mean, at the however much per hour we pay them, that's is worth it, but very expensive.
Yeah, that's a lot. Okay, so why don't you have your staff take a, I have to say that I'm such a control freak that I'm probably also going to look at it. But if your staff looks at it, I'll look at it. Rob and Paul, uh, could you both read through the bylaws and give Mara any suggestions you have for additions, subtractions, or amendments? And we can again put that on the agenda at the next meeting and maybe come up with some draft bylaws. And if we see the bylaws of some other commissions, Mara, if you get a hold of those, if you could circulate that to all three of us, and hopefully all three of us will have a chance to take a look at that before our October meeting. And I think that would be informative. So, it's a governance subcommittee, and so that's what we're focused on. Okay, that's the three things on our agenda. So it looks like we are going to end a little bit early. Does anyone have any suggestions, any of the two of you or Ken or Emiche, for other things? Not that I'm wanting other things, but do you have any suggestions for other things that the governance subcommittee should be looking at this fall, including Paul, and Rob both, if you know of things that this subcommittee can do that would be more focused on solving the unrepresented persons crisis, we need to add it to our agenda. So don't have to say anything off the top of your heads right now, but if you do think of other things, if you do know other things that you think this subcommittee should be doing, please let me know. Yeah, Paul.
I would say one thing that we should do is to discover A, and then B, scrutinize not necessarily pilot programs, but individual jurisdictional programs that are assisting in moving cases faster, and how those jurisdictions have gotten there with or without buy-in from the district attorney's group or the judges. Because I can see both groups having a real interest in helping us meet our issues, but both have institutional concerns or ideals or preferences that would not necessarily prohibit, but would restrict what we're able to accomplish by trying to work together with judges and with the district attorneys. I don't see our problems, frankly, as a problem that we can solve ourselves. And it's not one we can solve by ourselves with help from the legislature. We really need to find a way to gain the cooperation of the district attorneys and the judges in coming up with simple solutions to some of the problems. Something as simple as giving judges the discretion upon arraignment to reduce a misdemeanor to a violation.
I
That
think,
would
I think,
save a ton of money.
yeah, I think we all agree that this is a systemic problem, and figuring out how to get district attorneys and judges to help solve the problem is the right thing to do. I don't think anyone on the commission disagrees with that. Um, do you have a specific suggestion for what this governance subcommittee can do to move that goal forward?
Look at individual jurisdictions that seem to be doing something that is either on the right path or close to the right path, and seeing what it would take to expand those problem-solving ideas into other
So,
jurisdictions. It doesn't need to be everybody at once. We can pick off the low-hanging fruit of the areas that are willing, the individuals and the areas that are willing to work with us, whether it's just judges or just district attorneys in one jurisdiction or another. But
so if I'm understanding you correctly, our committee should gather information and then suggest to the commission what the commission could do with that information.
sure, that's another way of framing what I would like to see us do is start carving away at the core of the problem.
Okay, so can I ask you, in terms of so Rob's committee assignment between now and October is to work with the audit committee and get us a report in October. My committee assignment is to coordinate with Emma Shea and Ken and deal with making sure that we've got the bylaws up to date with the new legislation. Can your committee assignment be to discover which jurisdictions in Oregon are operating successfully and come back to us in October with a report of what those jurisdictions are, and to the extent you can find out how they have managed to get to a place where all of the parts of the system are working together? Could you come
Sure.
up? Great,
Sure.
fantastic.
That's a lot of jurisdictions in a fairly short period of time, but I will do my best, and I'll probably start with some of the larger communities rather than the smaller ones. And candidly, also at least make some inquiry into what I would call the problem jurisdictions where we seem to have such a degree of difficulty even making rudimentary progress towards solving the underlying issues.
I think that's great. And the best you can do between now and the beginning of October, it's obviously going to be an ongoing project, but I think that your position as a former active judge will go a long way to helping get that information. So I'm really glad that you're willing to do that.
And in the judicial department's annual meeting is coming up locally in just about a month. And so I would try and get a speaking position there so I can alert the judges what is coming. Judges hate to be surprised.
I bet they do. All the
So-
rest of us love to be surprised, of course, but
So I was thinking of your question about what this committee can do and Paul's proposal and idea of how to focus. And one thing we could do as far as maybe an amendment to our bylaws is to, if we haven't already, and I don't recall, is to authorize ad hoc subcommittees and rather than a standing subcommittee. And one ad hoc subcommittee could be that the chair could appoint people to who have some expertise is what Paul is suggesting, like innovative programming to reduce something and focus it on a county, right? Because different counties have different resources. And then you'd have people, it isn't just the chair and the vice chair trying to carry all the water. There's some delegation to some committee members who may have more expertise. Like I set up early case resolution dockets in Washington County and veteran and treatment courts. And, I'm not saying I would be on it, but someone who has that experience, someone who has maybe law enforcement, whatever, somebody in an experience who can have a small team of an ad hoc committee and say, meet with our agency, find out what kind of resources we have, and then be ambassadors, if nothing else, to the courts or to the DAs and to the local providers as actually an authorized ad hoc committee. So sort of formalize what you're talking about, I think.
Right.
But it's also directly related to our job as the governance subcommittee to come up with a structure to empower
Right.
that group.
Exactly. Great idea. Okay. So I'll start keeping a list of ideas. And again, as you come up with more ideas, if you get them to Mara and she'll forward them on to me, or you can send them to me directly. I don't think we'll violate public meeting laws. As I understand these public meeting laws, if you send me an email with a suggestion and I put it on a list, but we don't discuss it among ourselves until we have an actual open meeting, which will be in October, I think we're good with the public meeting laws. So anything that you send me as a suggestion will stay with me. I won't discuss it with anyone else on this committee or the commission, and then we can discuss it at our October meeting. Does that work for you all?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that no one's objecting at this point. For me, requesting some time at the judicial conference to repeat in a somewhat more extensive session than I just had with you folks about how I think would be at least baby steps forward towards solving this problem, and ask for the cooperation and ideas of the judges at the conference.
I don't know that you can say that you're speaking on behalf of the whole commission.
I would not. I know better than that. I've been around a while.
I know. You could probably say that you're bringing information back to the government's governance subcommittee.
Okay.
I mean, I think that's okay.
Okay.
Because they're going to want to know what you're going to do with whatever they say, right?
I don't know that they're gonna want to go that far. I think they may have deeper issues and concerns than how we go about our business.
Yeah, but anyway, if they want to know what you're going to do with it, I think it's fine to say you're going to bring it back to our
Bring
committee.
it back to the committee.
Yeah. Well, good. I think those are good suggestions, and it definitely will feel good if our committee is doing something other than just administrative busy work. I agree with you completely about that.
I didn't sign on to do administrative busy work.
No, and I don't think any of us did, frankly. Okay. Anything else for the good of the order?
Thank you for what you do, Susan.
Well,
Yeah, thanks, Susan. Thanks, Paul.
thank you both for what you do. And, we're all volunteers and have other things in our lives. So we're doing the best we can, I think. And I'll see you all in October. Or I'll see you
Okay.
all a couple of weeks for our commission meeting, I hope.
Yep.
All right.
You bet. You
Take
bet.
care.
Adios.
Bye-bye.